So welcome everyone for our actually last webinar before the summer break. It's a webinar that both Ted and I was longly waited for, and it's using our RStudio Workbench Trial version on UK Biobank research analysis platform. My name is Anastasia Sedlakova. I'm a senior community engagement scientist at DNA Nexus, focused on UKB RAP, and today I will be with
So I am Ted Ladaris. So I'm a principal scientist and bioinformatics trainer and R user at DNA Nexus. So,
yeah, very passionate R user. That's true. And we also have some our colleagues that will help us to answer on your question. So in case you want to ask the question, just use Q&A section. Okay, so by looking and talking with some of you, and we try to understand your needs, and it was work with UKB RAP project files inside our RStudio Workbench, manage R libraries in our RStudio Workbench reproducibly, and work with phenotype data in R. And so because of that, we created learning objectives for this webinar, and we'll utilize dx-toolkit and a dx-FUSE file for file transfer in our RStudio Workbench. And in case you don't know what it is, we'll cover that in detail a few minutes later. We'll also show you how to analyze exported phenotype data in our RStudio Workbench. I will show you the example script for that. We'll save and restore our RStudio project for UKB project storage, and Ted will show you best practices how you can do that. We'll be utilizing renv for reproducible R package management within our RStudio project, and we'll utilize Docker container using ttyd in the last part of this webinar. Before we'll start with some hands-on showing or demoing how you can work with our RStudio, let us just recapitulate some concepts of cloud computing. And in case something will not be still familiar for you, we encourage to go into our Introduction to Cloud Computing course, where we'll talk about these concepts more into the detail. So in order to compare, well, we have local analysis, we have an analysis in a cloud, so we can start with some schematic pipeline of analysis. So in the beginning, you have scripts, you have data, and you want to produce some results. So for your local analysis, everything of that will be in your computer. You need to provide software environment for that. You will install it yourself. And then you also analyze data inside your local computer. So that means that everything is inside your machine, you own it and you control it. Whereas with cloud-based analysis, we also start with that we have scripts and data, and that we want to produce some results that we want to store. But we need to create and request worker is a temporary computer, ephemeral worker. In our case, we'll have our RStudio there, and we need to configure it. And we also need to transfer scripts there, and also need to transfer data from project storage to our temporary worker, to our temporary instance. We then provide environment. This is partly covered by UKB RAP platform itself. And we analyze data inside this temporary worker. And since I emphasize the temporary word, that means that because it's temporary, everything in that worker will disappear once the session will end. So that means that you need somehow to transfer data outside of the temporary worker into the project storage. So that's what you do. And with this cloud-based analysis schema, we have two different types of storages. So maybe you notice it here. So this is something which we call project storage, and this is something which I said that it's temporary worker storage. So what it is conceptually. So we have a UKB RAP project. Once you linked your AMS account and you created UKB RAP account, and you are dispensing data, you're dispensing data in the project, and this project is a permanent storage, not only for the dispense data, but for the scripts that you have or for some results that you produce. So this is the permanent storage that we have. Then we have an RStudio Workbench instance, which is temporary storage. As I was showing in the previous slides, you configure the instance, you run your analysis, and once you want to terminate instance, everything on the instance is gone. So this is temporary storage. And because of that, we need to think about that we need to transfer input files from the permanent storage to the temporary storage. And we also need, after we created and generated some results, we need to transfer these results from temporary storage to the permanent so we can access them later. So what have we learned? The main thing that we have learned is that we have two different types of storage. One is a UKB RAP project storage, which is permanent storage, and another is RStudio Workbench Trial version up storage, which is a temporary storage that will disappear once the session will. And when you are doing cloud analysis, you need to request a temporary worker with some specific configuration settings, and we'll look at it in a few moments. And also, once your temporary worker is running, you need to transfer data and scripts there, and we will use some tools for that that are available on UKB RAP. So now that we covered the concepts of cloud-based analysis, let's look how you can launch RStudio Workbench. Before I will show more of that, I just want to emphasize that the trial version is available free of charge until August 31st. But even though the license is free of charge, the platform pricing still applies for the computing, storage, and egress. And you can find more information for pricing in this link here. So let us start with the launching. So here is your UKB RAP platform. You go to the tools section and you select RStudio Trial. This is RStudio Trial that page opens, and here you select New RStudio. You click on that, and here you have a dialog when you need to fill in several things. So here you can customize environment name. You also need to select the project, and based on what project you selected, you can download files from that project into your temporary instance that will have running RStudio Workbench. We highly advise you to leave priority as high. It's defaultly set as high, because this will ensure that there will be no unexpected termination of your RStudio instance. And this will be really unfortunate if you're just working on some script and you didn't save it before. Then you need to select instance type. So you need to select appropriate type based on what your data are. And here is the list of currently available instances. Our advice is start with the default instance, and if you see that it's not sufficient, you can upgrade it. So based on these two configuration, high, the priority and the instance tab, there will be estimated price per hour. And for those of you who have some experience with Jupyter Lab on UKB RAP, you may notice that this is not for the whole session, but just for hour, because here we do not have default time session, meaning that it will run forever if you don't terminate it. And we'll show you how you can do that. There are 3 different ways. So, okay, so this is the estimation that you got. And then you can confirm settings and launch RStudio by clicking on Start Environment. Then you will see that your RStudio session will be first initializing, then launching, and once it will be ready, the link will appear here, open, and it will open RStudio Workbench Trial in the different tab. So here is that new tab. When you click on New Session, then you leave all the settings as default. You click on the Start Session, and here you can see because a lot of you said that R is their primary language, this is something which should be really familiar for you, except for this bar that you have a terminal, or you can have console, you have environment, and here you have file here in RStudio. Because with that you need to terminate RStudio once you're done, we want to show you what are the different types how you can terminate your RStudio. So as you can see here, you can terminate it directly in RStudio here using terminate button. You can also terminate it in your tools section in RStudio sessions by clicking on three dots and environment. And you can also go to monitor section and click terminate here. So these are three different ways how you can terminate your RStudio Workbench. So what have we learned is that you can launch RStudio Workbench through Tools tab. It's running in specific UKB RAP project, and you can access files in that project. And really do not forget to terminate your RStudio Workbench after you're done, because it doesn't have a default time limit when it will terminate itself. So we launch our RStudio and we want to actually do some work there. So we'll show you some examples how you can work with phenotypic data and how you can access bulk files. So as I was already doing the overview, we have a terminal windows here where we can use dx-toolkit. And here we have we see what is inside the working directory of the temporary instance that is running RStudio. So what is a dx-toolkit? Dx-toolkit is a set of tools that can be used inside the command line, or as you will see in a moment, we can use it inside our R script using the system function. They are installed in RStudio Workbench by default, and you can use them in the terminal tab. There are plenty of different functions there, and you can see the list of commands, but I would like to pinpoint the important one. dx backup folder and dx restore folder to save and restore RStudio projects, and that will show you how you can use it according to the best practices and reproducible work. You can also use dx download to download files from UKB RAP permanent projects to the instance project. So what is a use case for that is that you have, for example, some VCF files or CRUM files, and you want to download it and then work with them in RStudio. So you will use dx download. And for uploading, there could be alternative for dx backup folder is a dx upload if you want to upload files. So you can upload it from temporary worker to UKB RAP project. So these two are complementary. So this is from permanent to temporary, and this is from temporary to permanent. And Ted made set of really very nice and comprehensive videos as an introduction of command line interface of UKB RAP. Here is the link, and I really encourage you to look and to watch these videos. So in order to show you how you can work with bulk data, let me first remind you what bulk data files are. These are the data files which in UK Biobank has a type of bulk. And there are two actually types of bulk data files. One is per group. So for example, this could be Plink files or PVCF files. And one could be per sample, for example, per sample VCF files, per sample CRUM files, or imaging files. Here is the information of such file. You can see the file name. So you see that there is not a real EID, but what you can see is you can see properties that can be then used for searching is field ID, which is a biobank, UK Biobank field ID, and EID, which is the participant ID. With the per sample files, there is a specific folder structure. So here, for example, we can see VCF files, and they are gathered in the different folders based on the first two digits. So if we have, this should be 1 and 2. So if we have a sample which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it will be in the folder 1, 2. And here is just example how you can transfer bulk files inside RStudio. So here's a R script. For example, you want to read a VCF file. So what you can do is you can download to the temporary storage the VCF file using dx download, and we are using system calls for that to call a command line inside R script, and then you can read the VCF file. I just want to note here that here you can see that there is a really huge file path when we are downloading, but once the file is downloaded, it will be in a current working directory, so you don't have, so you will not apply this whole file path before. Or what you can do is you can use dxFUSE. So instead of downloading file to the instance storage, you just can access it for reading using /mnt/project, and then just read it specified as a file path here. I also wanted to show you here is that when we will be working with RStudio and we'll be working with R Markdown, you may notice this window that is blocking HTML file to open, but you can just click try again, and the HTML file as a result file of knitted file of R Markdown will be opened. So this was just a few snippets of code for the bulk files. Now we can look into more into Pheno data, phenotypic data, and how you can work with them on RStudio. So the phenotypic data file needs to be created before, and we have actually 3 different ways how you can do that. You can use dx-data library in Python, and you can use this example notebook as a template. You can use table exporter, or you can use our R script, and it will be published later today on our UKB_RAP GitHub. And I will go briefly to these 2 ways how you can extract phenotypic data. But the important thing to remember is that you need to extract this phenotypic file before you will start your work. So this is an example of a table exporter app where you select cohort or dataset. You can change the output data prefix, and here you specify field titles. So I just want to, because I'm myself sometimes confused what is a field title and what is a field name. So I just want to show you the differences here. So for example, let's say that, and you can look at this field on this link in the UK Biobank documentation. So it's a pulse rate, it's instance 0 and array 0, meaning that pulse rate was measured 2 times for the participants. So here is a UK Biobank format, here's a file name, so that we'll use on UKB RAP platform, and here's a file field title. So title is something which is human readable, and this the field name is something more computer readable. And also, in case you will find out that the fields with comma in name are not working, then you can escape commas like that. So here we are showing example with systolic blood pressure automated reading field without escaping comma, and here is with escaping comma. So this is for the table exporter. But what our team did is they made an R script with a table exporter inside. So the script will be available on our GitHub. You run the script in the terminal window inside RStudio Workbench, and the output of the table exporter will be available on your RStudio instance. So what script does, as an input, you will provide list of CSV file with a list of fields, 1 field per line. You will provide it to the script. You also need to provide dataset or cohort ID, and then what script will run table exporter for you, and then it will download data from UKB RAP project to your instance storage. So the data will be available in your RStudio instance, so you can directly work with them. You can load them and work with them. And just a note about get dataset ID. So in case you don't know where to get dataset ID, you need to go to your platform and account, and then when you see the dataset, you can click and see the information, and here you will see the record ID that you can copy. And this is what you will use in our script. So let me just briefly show, once you want to work with the phenotypic data, what could be an example workflow for that. So you start with downloading CSV file, or in case you use our script, you omit this step. You can then load libraries that you would like to use. You read the CSV file, and you can, for example, plot histogram for each column. So this is actually how our examples file look like. This is the age of recruitment, and this is months of birth. So we make a descriptive statistics. We filter our data because we want to have age less than 5th percentile. We name this subset as data young, and then we write it as a new CSV. And once we have our new CSV, we would like it to upload it back to the platform. So by this, we're actually completing our cycle by transferring data from UKB RAP to instance storage, working with data analyzing, producing some results, and then uploading results back to the project storage. So what have we learned? We learned that we can use dx-download to transfer data from UKB RAP permanent storage to the instance storage. And for going from instance to UKB RAP storage, we'll be using dx-upload. That bulk folders that are per sample, they have a specific structure on UKB RAP project. But once you transfer them to the instance storage, you just use them directly without the file path. That you can prepare the phenotypic data need to be prepared before, and that each field has a field title, field name, and field name in UKB style. So now that we have some basics how you can work with a phenotypic data and bulk data, what about reproducibility and how you can work reproducibly in RStudio? And Ted will tell you about that.
Okay, so Anastasia has showed you how to launch RStudio Workbench and how to get data into it. So let's talk about working reproducibly with RStudio projects and UKB RAP. So one concern, like, as an R user is like, do I have to really reinstall everything every time I use the RStudio instance? So with this kind of method, this will avoid that and especially in terms of reproducibility. So before we get started, let's talk about, and I do dislike that, there's two terms for project here, but I just want to basically define them exactly so we know what we're talking about. So we know about the UKB RAP project. So as Anastasia has mentioned, this is permanent, and this is a basically home of like your exported Pheno data and your bulk data files. And what, we know that you have to get these files into your RStudio project. So let's talk about RStudio projects. Again, they are temporary. The way that projects work within RStudio, if you're not familiar with them, is that they are contained in a folder. And ideally, they contain all of your work, all of your scripts, all of your R Markdown files. So to get things into your project, you can use either, like as Anastasia mentioned, dx-download, dx-FUSE for file transfer. What we're going to be talking about in this section is a library called renv or renv. And this is going to help you reproducibly install and save your libraries. On top of that, we'll have I'll show you kind of how to kind of back up these projects back onto the UKB project storage using this command called dx-backup folder. And then we'll look at dx-restore folder to get things from your UKB project back into your current RStudio instance. So if we haven't, this hasn't been clear before, and we are a believer in repeating things multiple times that are important. Everything that was not saved in the project will be deleted once the RStudio Workbench session is terminated. Or in the words of Nintendo, everything not saved will be lost. So we're going to go through all of these steps, but I just want to talk about kind of when you're first starting to use RStudio and RStudio projects on RAP. So the first thing when you get launch into your RStudio instance is that you want to, or RStudio session is you want to create an RStudio project. This is just, this is like that new project wizard that pops up when you start a new project under the file menu. Then you'll need to install the renv library and then start working with renv using this init command. Then you'll be able to install the packages as needed, get your files from UKB RAP, do your work. If you have to interrupt your work, you need to use this snapshot command, and then you can basically save a version of your project using this dx backup folder. So let's talk about creating a project. So that is under the file menu. And if you go to new project, you'll see this new project wizard dialog box. So here, this is the next screen, and you'll basically select a new project. And then give it a project name. In this case, we're calling it RStudio Webinar. And then you can click Create Project, and that will create a project. So when you're in RStudio on the platform, this is what you'll see when you've created a project. You'll be in this folder that has your project name, and there'll only be one file in here, this this .rproj file. So this is a very important file because this is what we'll use to reopen our project when we restore it. So we've been trying, this is kind of a complicated process. So we want to just, again, kind of step you through it in terms of timeline. And then again, we're going to go over these in much more detail. So when you create it, so the first thing is when you're doing your RStudio, you've started your RStudio instance and session, you'll create an RStudio project. In our case, in this example, it's called my_project. And then we've got some files that are in RAP project storage, whether they're in the bulk folder. This example is actually in the metadata folder. And this is a hint for finding field titles. This is a great file to work with. So say we wanted to get that onto into our project. So one way we can do that is, as Anastasia has mentioned, is we can use dx-download. So we'll basically download this file, and it will download into our project. Then, like I said, you'll need to install renv, install the packages, load your data in RStudio, do some work, and then snapshot. And then when you're done, you'll use this command dx backup folder to actually save this as a tar.gz file, which will then get uploaded back into your RAP project storage. So been talking about renv. So what is it? If you have worked with Python at all, it's very similar to Python virtual environments. It basically lets you encapsulate all of your installed packages and dependencies. Most importantly, and this is why we're telling you to use an RStudio project, even if you haven't before, the libraries are basically tied to an RStudio project. What does that mean? So if you once you kind of initialize everything, you'll have this renv folder and this renv lock file. So these are very important because this is basically keeping track. The lock file keeps track of all of the versions, but the renv folder, if you dive a little further, there's a folder called library. And in those libraries, these are all of those extra libraries that you've installed. So you can see that it's actually really helpful to kind of use renv to basically install your dependencies, because it basically all of your dependencies live inside your project. So the main workflow, like we've mentioned, is renv init to initialize renv in your project. You'll just go about installing your packages using install.packages, and then making sure to use renv snapshot when you're done to consolidate everything. So again, the nice thing about this is, like, when you restore your project from UKB storage, like, your libraries will be restored and you don't have to kind of reinstall everything. So this is why we are encouraging you to use projects and renv. So how do we actually get things back into the project or into the RAP project? So in our terminal, we're going to be using this command called dx-backup-folder, and we can give it a destination. So here it's going to be in this folder called .backups, and then we'll call it RStudio test project.tar.gz. And you'll get this, if it worked successfully, you'll get a backups, basically this message, and it tells you that it's saved into your RAP project storage. And if you look in your RAP project storage, so this is that .backups folder, you'll see that tar.gz file. So this is like a single file, but this contains everything that you in your project that was installed, and it's just zipped up or gzipped up. So let's talk about restoring the project using the dx restore folder. So we have our RAP project here. So we can use this dx restore folder. Just keep a note that you have to use the path on RAP here. And then you want to give it this -d flag, and then give it the name of your project. That way it will restore it in that project folder. And then once that is done, you can click the .rproj file in your folder to reopen the project. So this is, I guess, we've been talking about some of the issues of working with cloud computing. I know this is not as convenient as kind of working on an RStudio server, but this is kind of how you're going to be working on RAP. So we saw that there's kind of two ways to get files back into RAP project storage, dx upload and dx backup folder. So let's just do a quick contrast. So for dx upload, you can use that for uploading individual files back into RAP project storage. And the default destination of that is going to be the root folder, the UKB RAP project. So your dx backup folder, so this is for backing up your current project folder into project storage. So again, you'll basically be making sure that you navigate into your particular project within the terminal, project folder in the terminal, and then you'll use dx backup folder. And the default destination for this is the /.backups folder in your UKB RAP project. So if you have questions about the difference, that's hopefully will make that a little more clear. So let's talk again about restoring an RStudio project. So we'll do this dx restore folder and see we have given the full path. Actually, I need to add that -d here. So when these go out, I'll fix that. So this basically unzips that folder into your current session, and basically when you click on the rproj file, you'll load the project and all of your dependencies. So if you need to install packages after restoring, just make sure to use this command renv activate, and then snapshot when you're done. So this is just one thing to keep in mind when you are working with this. So just want to kind of end with a few things about installing packages in the RStudio instance. So there are certain Linux dependencies, especially for Bioconductor. So we do want to, so when you are kind of doing that, if you're installing the utilities, so Python-based utilities using pip, if you look at this best practices document, it encourages you to use virtual environments here. So definitely look at this link. Specifically for Bioconductor, you need to install, upgrade, do this in terminal sudo apt update, sudo apt upgrade, and then install these various libraries because they're needed for Bioconductor. So again, let's talk about RAP project storage and RStudio storage. So again, to talk about it for maybe the third or fourth time, but this is important. We don't want you to lose your work. So you can use, basically, this is your UKB RAP storage. You can consider that permanent. So we can get our files from our bulk folder or, our exported Pheno data. And you can transfer these input files over with dx download, or if you have everything in the RStudio project, dx restore folder. You'll do some work, you'll generate some output, and then you'll transfer the RStudio project back using dx backup folder. So this was basically a crash course in reproducibility. So if you haven't been kind of made aware of all the issues with reproducibility, this will help you a lot. But the number one lesson here is to use RStudio projects in your work. This is just so important because it helps you avoid having to reinstall packages. When you use, you can use dx download or dx-FUSE to get your files from UKB project storage into your project. You'll use renv to manage all of your packages in an RStudio project. You'll use dx backup folder to save that RStudio project to UKB project storage as a tar.gz file. And then you can restore your project using this dx restore folder. So let's spend...
Maybe just before we start with the evaluation, there was a question, and I think that maybe good to answer it right now. So Juan is asking, are the RStudio project files in a permanent storage or in temporary virtual machine? So
when you have this is a great question. So when you have first created your project, that's just going to be on the instance. So that's why you need to use that dx backup folder to get it back into RAP project storage. And if you have used Jupyter Lab, I know this is different than Jupyter Lab, but this is kind of the way it is with RStudio projects, unfortunately. So let's talk about using the RStudio Docker container. So this is an alternate way of using RStudio. This is for more advanced users. So if you look in our documentation, there is a page on actually launching RStudio, and it's kind of this two-step process. You basically open ttyd, which is a web terminal, into a worker on the platform, and then you basically use Docker to run the RStudio container. One thing, the reason why we say that you need to, this is more advanced, is you need to be comfortable with assigning ports. If you don't know what ports are, I don't recommend that you do this. If you need to use the Bioconductor container, you can substitute bioconductor/bioconductor.docker in the Docker run statement. So, and one thing is that if you want to use dx download and dx upload, you will need to install dx-toolkit. So because obviously the Docker container is not kind of aware of the DNA Nexus platform. You can also use dx-FUSE, that /mnt/project, to download files, so it works just fine. So what are some of the advantages of this method? So if you are a Bioconductor user, you know that Bioconductor takes a while to install. That's because there's a lot of stuff that goes along with it. So basically, with the container, you can leverage pre-installed Bioconductor libraries using the Docker image. And again, in terms of reproducibility, you can do reproducible analysis tied to a version tag. So like I mentioned, there are some disadvantages with this. So you will need to install dx-toolkit in the terminal or use dx-FUSE to transfer files. The other big caveat is that this might not be that important for academic people, but for people who work in industry is just be aware that the RStudio open source license is a Pheno GPL. So this is a copyleft license. There are some things that are very concerning for industry folks. So just be aware that there are some implications to using RStudio open source. And like I mentioned, it is a little more complex to start and you need to be comfortable with assigning ports. So we encourage you to look at that documentation. Just want to give you a short kind of like view on how to get it started. So you'll first open with the tool, going into tool library, you'll open the ttyd app. Before you start it, you need to change this this port. So the default value here is 443. You'll see that it's 8080. You need to change it to 8080. That's because we're going to be running RStudio as the RStudio or Bioconductor container as a web app, and that needs to have port 443 open. So if you're on the command line, you can run this command from the local computer. It's dx-run app. The main thing is that you need to change that port to 8080 here. Just a quick question that I can answer while we're in the middle of this. So when it is needed to install dx-toolkit, where is it installed to? So this will be when you're running the Bioconductor or RStudio container. So you'll first you'll find in the monitor tab, you'll find the worker URL, but to access ttyd, because we opened it on port 80880, you'll need to append a :8080 to access ttyd. So this is exactly that. So you'll get basically, you'll get access, SSH access into or shell access into your instance that's running. And then in ttyd, you're going to run this command. So this is a Docker run command. So again, we need to map everything to port 443. We need to make available like things in the file system as volumes. So we'll do some mapping here. Because we have root level access, we can disable authentication. And then this is our container that we're running. So bioconductor/bioconductor_docker :release. And with that tag number. So what have we learned in this section? So Dockerized Bioconductor can be run as a container on RAP. You need to start up the ttyd app with a different port, and then you need to open the instance by appending a :8080 here. You'll start up the container using Docker run and make sure you map the port to 443. And then you can access the RStudio instance at the normal URL for that. So let's just wrap things up. Thank you for staying with us. Hopefully this has been helpful and given you ways to work effectively on RAP. So let's just summarize everything. So RStudio Workbench is available as a free trial until August 31st. It will be paid as a monthly fee afterwards. We're still figuring out what the fee structure is for that. You start RStudio Workbench on the platform using tools, and then going to the RStudio tab. You can work with bulk data using dx-download or dx-FUSE. You can use exported Pheno data in RStudio, and then use RStudio project, renv, to save software dependencies. And then your main tool for getting things on and off the platform after you've made a project is using dx backup folder and dx restore folder. And as always, don't forget to terminate your instance when done. So that's all we have. Anastasia, would you like to just kind of talk a little bit more about, the last slides?
Yeah. So we have a UKB RAP community. So it's our community forum at community.dnanexus.com. You can look at two of the repositories that we have. One is for materials for the webinars, and another is with example notebooks. Actually, with materials for the webinars, you can also see an example R Markdown for RStudio video documentation that we created. You can also sign into our newsletter, and you can see the different webinars that we had before we started. It's more than 10 actually that we made together. So if you can go to the next slide, I think that there will be our GitHub repository. So, like as in YouTube, do not forget to like and subscribe. So do not forget to star and watch our repository to see some of the new code that we'll be releasing. We're releasing code after each of our webinar that we're doing. And there will be some upcoming webinars. So there will be a collaborative webinar on July 14th. There will be an analysis of accelerometer and metabolic data on September 15th, and there will be in September Docker. And also we have, in case of some of you is living in Oxford or close to Oxford, we will have in the 22nd of June, we'll have an in-person workshop there. So you can see us there. And yeah, and I think that we can now recapitulate on some of the questions that we got in the Q&A.
Yep.
So
Joseph is asking a question. Is it possible to set up a private container registry on RAP? Yes, I believe this is possible. I think the way it, and I haven't done this before, but I'm guessing that you'll generate an API token to basically access your private repository. But okay, I'm sorry. It said private container registry on RAP. I believe it is possible. I don't know exactly how to do that. We'll try to contact support and see what solutions there are for that.
Yeah, you can definitely do it for the when you're doing WDL. So there should be a way how you can set your credentials and access private registry.
Yep.
There also was a question about when Juan is asking when it is said need to install the dx-toolkit, where is it installed to? Into my local machine? So yeah, if you can, if you want to address that.
I answered that in the middle of the talk, but just to recapitulate, when I say that you need to install dx-toolkit, you'll install it on the container when you're running it. But again, I believe you can use, I've run the container and I've just used the dx-FUSE method using the /mnt/project to access the files. And, but if you need to basically back up things, you'll need to install dx-toolkit to use that dx backup folder command.
There's also a question about dx-FUSE, if it is writable. So far it's experimental, and we recommend it to use for read only. But you can look more into the GitHub repository for dx-FUSE, and you can try it with experimentally in writing mode.
Yeah, but if it is critical, we suggest that you use the dx backup folder or dx upload. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like for me, last question, I just want to really emphasize. So there was a question from Juan. Are the RStudio project file in the permanent storage or in the temporary virtual machine? So these are like two different things. We have this RAP storage, and then we have RStudio project, like UKB RAP and project in RStudio project. So once as you're following that's best practices, and you upload RStudio project file into the UKB RAP project, then it's in permanent storage. If you don't upload it, then it will just stay on your instance storage and will disappear once the session ends. Do you want to add something, Ted?
Oh, no. So Nipun was asking a question in chat. Is there a way to save snapshots in the RStudio instance similar to Jupyter notebooks? So that basically that was that whole RStudio projects. That's why we were encouraging you to use RStudio projects and then the RStudio, then DX backup folder.